Love is something almost everyone longs for, but not everyone experiences it in the same way. We all carry different emotional patterns, and those patterns shape how we connect with the people who care about us. When you develop feelings for someone with an avoidant attachment style, relationships can feel confusing and unpredictable. One day they seem completely engaged with you. They're warm, attentive, and emotionally open. They initiate conversations, laugh with you, ask thoughtful questions, and make you feel like the connection is naturally growing. In those moments, it can feel as though they're finally letting their guard down and allowing you into a part of themselves that few people ever get to see. Then, almost without warning, everything changes. The messages become shorter or stop altogether. They seem distracted, less expressive, and emotionally harder to reach. Plans that once excited them suddenly feel uncertain. The same person who appeared deeply connected now seems distant, reserved, or completely unavailable, leaving you wondering what happened. There may not have been an argument, a misunderstanding, or any obvious event to explain the shift. Everything might have seemed perfectly normal the last time you spoke. The conversation ended on a positive note. There was no visible tension, and nothing suggested that anything was wrong. That's what makes the experience so confusing. You're left searching for an explanation that simply doesn't exist on the surface. Naturally, your mind starts filling in the blanks. You replay every conversation, reread old messages, and question your own actions. You wonder if you spoke too openly, waited too long to reply, came across as too interested, or somehow crossed a boundary without realizing it. The absence of a clear reason makes it easy to assume that you must have done something wrong. But often, the distance isn't connected to a specific mistake or a single moment. Sometimes the shift begins quietly inside the other person, long before it becomes visible to you. As the relationship grows emotionally significant, feelings they weren't expecting can begin to surface. The connection starts to feel more real, and with that reality comes vulnerability. For someone who struggles with emotional closeness, those deeper feelings can activate old fears they may not even fully understand themselves. Instead of recognizing those fears for what they are, they may instinctively pull back. They become less available, communicate less often, or seem emotionally disconnected, not because their feelings disappeared, but because those feelings suddenly feel overwhelming. From the outside, it looks like they lost interest overnight. On the inside, they may simply be trying to regain a sense of emotional balance. This is why their withdrawal can feel so sudden and confusing. There isn't always a dramatic event that causes it. Sometimes the relationship itself reaches a level of closeness that quietly activates their protective instincts. What appears to be a random change in behavior is often the result of an internal emotional struggle that has been building beneath the surface long before you ever noticed it. From your perspective, it can feel as if the connection disappeared overnight. This confusing pattern often leaves people searching for answers. They replay conversations in their minds, wondering if they said the wrong thing, moved too quickly, or somehow pushed the other person away. They look for hidden clues, trying to pinpoint the exact moment everything changed. But in many cases, the distance has very little to do with anything you did. For someone with avoidant attachment patterns, emotional closeness itself can become the trigger. As intimacy grows, so does their unconscious fear of depending on another person or losing the independence they've worked hard to protect. When the relationship begins to feel more meaningful, their nervous system may interpret that growing closeness as emotional risk rather than emotional security. Instead of leaning further into the connection, they instinctively create distance to reduce the discomfort they are experiencing. That withdrawal isn't always a deliberate decision. Often, it's an automatic protective response shaped by years of emotional conditioning. Deep down, they may genuinely care about you, but the closer they feel, the stronger their internal conflict becomes. One part of them longs for intimacy and companionship, while another part urges them to step back before they become too emotionally vulnerable. This push and pull dynamic is what makes relationships with avoidant individuals so confusing. Their warmth is usually genuine, and so is their withdrawal. They're not necessarily playing games or trying to send mixed signals. More often, they're caught in an internal struggle between the desire for connection and the fear of what that connection might eventually require. Until they become aware of that pattern and begin working through it, the cycle of drawing close and pulling away can continue, leaving both people feeling confused, frustrated, and emotionally exhausted. It can leave you wondering if you said the wrong thing, asked for too much, or somehow pushed them away. Sometimes all it takes is a heartfelt conversation, a request for reassurance, or a deeper level of closeness before they begin to retreat. Their replies become shorter, conversations lose their warmth, they may disappear for a while, avoid emotional topics, or hide behind busy schedules and polite excuses. To the person on the receiving end, it often feels as though love is slipping away just when it was beginning to grow. But the reality is usually more complicated than it appears. An avoidant person is not necessarily running because they don't care. In many cases, they withdraw because the relationship is becoming emotionally important to them. As intimacy grows, so does their sense of vulnerability. Instead of feeling comforted by closeness, they often experience it as emotional pressure. Their instinct is not to lean in, it is to create distance so they can regain a sense of control and emotional safety. That is why trying to make an avoidant love you through bigger emotional gestures rarely works. More intensity does not make them feel closer. Constant reassurance, repeated demands for answers, or overwhelming displays of affection can sometimes have the opposite effect. What feels like love to you may feel emotionally overwhelming to them. So how do you create the kind of emotional safety that allows an avoidant person to open their heart without losing yourself in the process? The answer begins with changing the way you think about love itself. With an avoidant, love is not built through emotional intensity. It is built through emotional consistency. Consistency means becoming someone whose actions match their words. It means showing up in reliable ways instead of creating emotional highs and lows. It means offering kindness without trying to force vulnerability before they are ready. Over time, repeated experiences of emotional stability begin to challenge the beliefs they have carried for years that closeness always leads to disappointment, pressure, rejection, or the loss of independence. This does not mean ignoring your own needs or accepting unhealthy behavior. Feeling safe is not the same as never being challenged. A healthy relationship still requires honesty, respect, and mutual effort from both people. You should never sacrifice your emotional well-being just to keep someone comfortable. Instead, emotional safety comes from creating a relationship where both people can be authentic without fearing constant judgment or emotional punishment. It means communicating calmly instead of reacting impulsively. It means respecting healthy boundaries while also maintaining your own. It means allowing trust to develop naturally, rather than trying to rush emotional milestones before the foundation is strong enough to support them. For someone with avoidant attachment, trust usually grows much more slowly than attraction. They may feel strong emotions long before they feel ready to express them. Their actions can seem confusing because their emotional system is trying to balance two competing desires at the same time: the desire for connection and the fear of depending on another person. That inner conflict often explains why they move closer one day and further away the next. It is not always a reflection of how much they care. Sometimes it is a reflection of how unfamiliar emotional security feels to them. If you truly want an avoidant person to feel safe enough to love, remember that patience is more powerful than pressure. Calmness is more effective than emotional urgency. Reliability creates more trust than dramatic declarations ever could. The strongest relationships with avoidant individuals are not built on chasing, convincing, or proving your worth. They are built through repeated moments of emotional stability, respect, and genuine understanding. Over time, those steady experiences can slowly replace old fears with new expectations. Instead of anticipating rejection or emotional overwhelm, they begin to experience closeness as something peaceful rather than threatening. And perhaps the most important part of all is remembering yourself throughout the process. Loving someone with avoidant attachment should never require abandoning your own emotional needs, silencing your voice, or constantly walking on eggshells. A healthy relationship is never one-sided. Real love asks both people to grow, communicate, and gradually become safer places for each other. When an avoidant finally feels emotionally secure, they often reveal a depth of affection that was hidden beneath years of self-protection, but that transformation cannot be forced. It happens through trust that is earned over time, not demanded in a single conversation. In the end, making an avoidant feel safe enough to love is not about finding the perfect words or performing the perfect gesture. It is about creating an environment where love no longer feels like a threat. It is about replacing uncertainty with reliability, pressure with patience, and fear with steady emotional presence. Because for an avoidant, the deepest form of love is not the loudest or the most dramatic. It is the quiet confidence that someone can stay consistent, respectful, and emotionally safe, and that closeness does not have to mean losing themselves. Most people think that if someone pulls away, the answer is to love them harder. They try to send more messages, offer more reassurance, or prove they are committed. But when you're dealing with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, that approach often has the opposite effect. The more pressure they feel, the stronger their instinct becomes to create distance. To understand why, you first have to understand what closeness has meant to them throughout their life. For many avoidant individuals, emotional intimacy has never felt completely safe. Somewhere along the way, they learned that depending on other people could lead to disappointment, criticism, rejection, or losing a sense of themselves. Maybe they grew up in an environment where emotions were ignored instead of welcomed. Maybe they were praised for handling everything alone while vulnerability was seen as weakness. Whatever the reason, their nervous system learned to treat deep emotional connection as something risky instead of comforting. That doesn't mean they don't want love. In fact, many avoidant people crave connection just as deeply as anyone else. The difference is that when relationships begin to feel serious, another part of them starts sounding an alarm. Instead of feeling excitement, they may feel trapped. Instead of moving closer, they instinctively create distance, because distance has always felt safer than emotional exposure. This is why trying to convince them to love you rarely works. Love isn't something they reject. It's the fear that sometimes comes with love that makes them hesitate. If every meaningful relationship in the past carried emotional pain, it's understandable why opening their heart again feels dangerous. Creating emotional safety begins with respecting their need for independence without disappearing yourself. Healthy space isn't the same as emotional abandonment. It's simply allowing another person room to breathe without constantly questioning their feelings or demanding reassurance every moment. When someone feels they still have freedom inside a relationship, they are often much more willing to move toward intimacy on their own. That doesn't mean pretending you don't care or playing games to make them chase you. Those strategies usually create confusion rather than trust. Real emotional safety comes from consistency. It comes from knowing that disagreements don't automatically become emotional explosions and that difficult conversations can happen without blame or manipulation. The way you communicate matters more than many people realize. Imagine the difference between saying, "Why won't you ever tell me how you feel?" and saying, "I enjoy it when we can be open with each other. Whenever you feel comfortable sharing, I'll listen." Both sentences express the same desire, but one creates pressure while the other creates an invitation. An avoidant person often responds much better when they feel they still have a choice. Choice is incredibly important because control feels safe to them. If they believe someone is trying to force emotional closeness before they're ready, their defenses naturally become stronger. But when connection is offered gently instead of demanded, curiosity slowly replaces fear. Timing also plays an important role. When an avoidant person is overwhelmed, trying to solve everything immediately usually makes the situation worse. In those moments, their mind is focused on protecting itself, not processing emotions. Giving them a little room doesn't mean ignoring problems forever. It simply means allowing both people to return to the conversation when emotions are calmer and clearer. Think about trust like planting a tree. You cannot force it to grow overnight by pouring all the water onto it at once. Too much can actually damage it. Healthy growth happens through steady care, patience, and time. Relationships with avoidant individuals often develop in much the same way. The strongest bonds usually aren't built through dramatic moments. They're built through hundreds of ordinary experiences where both people consistently feel respected. Matching their emotional pace can also make a meaningful difference. If they share something personal, you don't need to immediately respond with your entire life story. Sometimes the most powerful response is simply listening carefully and acknowledging what they shared. That shows you're interested without overwhelming them. As trust grows, deeper conversations often happen naturally. One thing many people misunderstand is that avoidant individuals don't necessarily fear love itself. More often, they fear losing themselves inside a relationship. They worry that emotional closeness will eventually cost them their independence, their peace, or their ability to make their own decisions. When a relationship consistently proves otherwise, those fears can slowly begin to soften. Consistency becomes far more convincing than grand romantic gestures. An avoidant person pays close attention to patterns. They notice whether someone stays calm during disagreements. They notice whether affection is given freely or used as a bargaining tool. They notice whether boundaries are respected or ignored. Even when they don't openly talk about these observations, they're quietly collecting evidence about whether someone feels emotionally safe. Every respectful interaction helps rewrite old expectations. Little by little, they begin to discover that closeness doesn't always lead to conflict. They learn that vulnerability doesn't automatically end in disappointment. Those lessons cannot be rushed, but they can be experienced. Healthy boundaries matter for both people. Supporting someone doesn't mean accepting every behavior without question. If they disappear for long periods without communicating, it's okay to express your needs calmly and honestly. You might explain that you respect their need for space while also valuing reliability and open communication. That approach protects your own emotional well-being without turning the conversation into criticism. Ironically, many avoidant people respect this kind of emotional stability. They often feel more comfortable with someone who knows their own limits than with someone who sacrifices everything to keep the relationship alive. Clear boundaries communicate self-respect, and self-respect often creates trust. Patience is another essential ingredient. Progress rarely happens in dramatic leaps. Instead, it appears in small changes that are easy to overlook. Maybe they start reaching out first more often. Maybe they remain present during conversations they once avoided. Maybe they begin asking about your feelings instead of changing the subject. These moments may seem ordinary, but for someone who struggles with intimacy, they represent significant emotional growth. Recognizing these changes without demanding even more encourages continued progress. Appreciation creates motivation. Pressure often creates retreat. It's equally important to take responsibility for your own emotional health. Sharing your emotions is healthy, but expecting another person to constantly regulate them is different. Avoidant individuals often become overwhelmed when they feel responsible for fixing someone else's emotional state. They usually respond much better when they see a partner who can express feelings honestly while also managing them in a healthy way. Strong relationships are built by two emotionally responsible people, not by one person carrying the emotional weight of both. When each partner takes ownership of their own well-being, the relationship becomes a place of support instead of emotional survival. At the same time, it's important to be honest with yourself. Loving someone with an avoidant attachment style isn't the right path for everyone. If your emotional needs require frequent reassurance, daily affection, and constant closeness, this relationship may feel exhausting no matter how much you care about each other. That doesn't mean either person is wrong. It simply means your needs may not naturally align. Before asking whether they feel safe with you, ask whether you genuinely feel safe with them. Do you feel respected? Do you feel valued? Are your needs heard? Or are you constantly waiting for the next moment of connection? Emotional safety should never exist for only one person. A healthy relationship protects both hearts. One surprising thing often happens when you stop chasing approval and start focusing on your own emotional stability. You become calmer, more confident, and less dependent on constant reassurance. That shift changes the entire dynamic. Instead of feeling pursued, the avoidant person begins to experience the relationship as balanced and secure. The pressure disappears, making genuine closeness much easier to choose. Real love cannot be forced. It grows through trust, patience, consistency, and mutual respect. When love feels like a decision made freely, rather than an obligation demanded by fear, relationships have the opportunity to flourish. If you're walking this path, remember that meaningful change is usually quiet. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens one honest conversation, one respectful boundary, and one small act of trust at a time. Those small moments, repeated consistently, often become the foundation of the strongest and healthiest relationships. Someone with an avoidant attachment style may never become the kind of partner who constantly expresses their feelings through grand speeches, dramatic romance, or endless declarations of love. That simply may not be how they naturally connect. But when they truly feel emotionally safe with someone, the love they offer can become incredibly dependable. It is often expressed through quiet actions instead of impressive words, through reliability instead of excitement, and through steady commitment instead of emotional intensity. In many ways, that kind of love is uncommon because it is built on trust rather than performance. The biggest mistake people make is believing they can talk an avoidant into feeling safe. Emotional security is rarely created by saying the perfect thing. It is created by the energy you consistently bring into the relationship. Your calm presence, your respect for healthy boundaries, your emotional maturity, and your ability to remain grounded during difficult moments communicate far more than any speech ever could. When an avoidant begins to realize that closeness with you does not automatically lead to pressure, criticism, or the loss of their independence, something slowly starts to change. They begin lowering the emotional walls they have relied on for years, not because they are afraid you might leave, but because they gradually believe that staying close no longer feels dangerous. That shift happens through trust, and trust is always built over time. At the same time, it is important to remember that your emotional well-being matters just as much as theirs. Supporting someone else's healing should never require abandoning yourself. Healthy love is not about carrying another person's emotional burdens while ignoring your own. It is about two people creating a space where both feel respected, understood, and emotionally secure. If this message has helped you understand avoidant attachment a little more clearly, take a moment to turn that same compassion inward. Ask yourself whether you also feel emotionally safe within yourself. Are you constantly seeking reassurance from others, or are you building a life where your peace does not depend on someone else's approval? The strongest relationships are created when both people take responsibility for their own emotional growth instead of expecting the other person to complete or rescue them. Real love has never been about chasing someone who keeps running, trying to repair someone who refuses to participate in their own healing, or endlessly proving that you deserve to be loved. Genuine connection grows when two people consistently show up with honesty, patience, respect, and authenticity. It is found in the small moments of reliability that slowly create lasting trust. If you are sharing your life with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, remember that progress rarely happens overnight. There may be moments of closeness followed by moments of distance. There may be times when you wonder whether anything is changing at all. Stay patient, but never lose your own sense of self. Stay compassionate, but continue honoring your boundaries. Stay emotionally grounded and never forget that your peace deserves protection too. One of the most powerful turning points in any relationship comes when you stop making your happiness dependent on being chosen by another person. The moment you begin choosing your own emotional peace, self-respect, and inner stability, your entire perspective changes. You stop chasing validation and start attracting healthier connections built on mutual respect rather than emotional desperation. Ironically, that quiet confidence often creates the very emotional safety that avoidant individuals individuals struggle to find. No matter where you are in your journey, remember that love is not measured by constant excitement or dramatic emotional highs. Lasting love is built through consistency, honesty, mutual respect, and the willingness to keep showing up with integrity even when relationships become challenging. Those simple qualities create a foundation that can withstand uncertainty far better than temporary passion ever could. If today's message resonated with you in any way, and you feel it gave you a deeper understanding of avoidant attachment, or helped you see your own relationships from a new perspective, I'd truly appreciate your support. A simple like on this video helps more people discover these conversations, allowing others who may be struggling with similar relationship challenges to find guidance, clarity, and hope. If you're interested in learning more about attachment styles, emotional healing, healthy communication, self-worth, and building stronger, more secure relationships, be sure to subscribe to the channel. This channel is dedicated to helping you better understand not only the people you love, but also yourself. Every video is created to give you practical insights, thoughtful perspectives, and tools that can help you navigate relationships with greater confidence and emotional awareness. Whether you're healing from heartbreak, trying to understand an avoidant partner, working through anxious attachment, recovering from a toxic relationship, or simply looking to build healthier emotional habits, you'll find content here that supports your personal growth every step of the way. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you're always among the first to know when a new video is released. That way, you won't miss future discussions that explore the psychology behind relationships, emotional patterns, trust, boundaries, self-respect, and the small shifts that can completely transform the way you experience love. Every new video is designed to help you grow a little stronger, communicate a little better, and create relationships that feel more peaceful, secure, and fulfilling. Most importantly, I want this channel to be more than just a collection of videos. I want it to become a community where people can learn, reflect, and support one another without judgment. Every comment, every shared experience, and every conversation adds value because someone reading your story may realize they aren't alone in what they're going through. Together, we can create a space where emotional growth is encouraged, healing is possible, and honest conversations about love and attachment become easier to have. Thank you for being part of this journey. Your support means more than you probably realize, and I'm grateful that you've chosen to spend your time here. I look forward to continuing this journey with you, sharing more insights, practical guidance, and meaningful conversations that help all of us build healthier relationships, stronger emotional foundations, and a deeper understanding of what real, lasting love truly looks like. And if you're currently navigating a relationship that feels confusing, emotionally complicated, or difficult to understand, share your experience in the comments. Your story may encourage someone else who is walking a similar path, and this community is a place where honest conversations are always welcome. I take the time to read your thoughts because no one should feel isolated while trying to make sense of love and connection. Thank you for spending this time here. Above all, remember this. Love is not something you earn by chasing, convincing, or changing who you are. Real love is something that grows when two people create an environment of trust, emotional safety, and authenticity together. The healthier you become within yourself, the healthier the love you are able to give, and the healthier the love you will naturally receive.